Welcome to everyone who is new here. My name is Rachel, and to everyone who is returning. Hey, how's it going? Today I thought that I would be doing my January wrap-up, and so I have a lot of books here. I'm excited to get to reviewing books. Reviewing books is my favorite. I thought that I would use my trusty reading journal to help me get through this. I've actually already filmed a lot of this once, but I kept on having troubles with the audio and with my phone, and so now I'm just filming on my iPad, so hopefully this works and hopefully I don't run out of battery. We shall see. I read about 17 books this month, so it's probably going to take a while. I am just finishing The Stolen Heir, which will not be included in this one. I think I'm going to do a separate video for The Stolen Heir, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah, let's go ahead and just get started. Okay, the first two books I'm actually going to talk about together because they are part of a series, and that series is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. So this is the first one, this is the second volume. These are graphic novels about Hades and Persephone. Every god or goddess has a color that correlates to them. These are not young adult books. There are lots of adult themes in here, so go into it knowing that. For as silly as it is, there are plenty of triggering subjects that are talked about too. So Lore Olympus is a part of my big overall TBR. I would like to read more graphic novels just because I feel like I haven't really read that many graphic novels. So I just want to try it out. I just want to see if I enjoy them. And I really enjoyed these. I flew through these. I mean, I would say probably like maybe 4 hours to read both of these. Like it was quick. The hard thing about these is, as far as like plot and like moving forward, there's not that much. There are so many like little side quests in here that got to be kind of annoying. So I will say, if you are looking for more plot heavy, these are not super plot heavy. I'm considering waiting until all of the volumes are out to finish reading this, because I do want to finish reading it. I think I gave both of them 3 stars. But if you are interested in starting out in a graphic novel, I would recommend these because these are very good and the themes are very interesting. So, but just go into it knowing the trigger warnings. So yeah, keep those in mind. So Lore Olympus. The next book that I read that I absolutely loved was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book, wow. I mean, if you love reading and you want a super quotable book, this is the book to read. The premise of it is you have a girl named Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with the devil. She makes a deal that as long as she can be free, never have to get married, never have to have kids, and explore the world and have all the time in the world to do that, once she is done with her soul, give it to the devil. And the devil accepts. And basically what happens then is the devil makes it so everyone forgets about her. So she stays the same age and she lives like that, but no one remembers her. She can meet someone, and then as soon as she's out of sight from them, they forget about her and she has to start all over again. So it's a very, very lonely existence. It's a very difficult existence because it's not like she can get a job, she can even like live anywhere. She lives basically alone for 300 years until one day she meets this guy named Henry in New York City, and he remembers her. And it's basically their story together, and it is such a emotional roller coaster. I mean, I sobbed while reading this book. There are just so many elements to it. Like Addie LaRue and her motivation for what she was doing was super relatable. Henry was super relatable. I'm gonna go ahead and read what I wrote. This book had me sobbing by the end. Addie's story was the way and the way it was written was the most magical, heartbreaking, and terrifying thing I have ever read. Addie's need for freedom and Henry's yearning to be enough were so relatable. This book is one of the most quotable books I have ever read. The ending had me falling apart. I loved it. I gave it initially 5 stars. I think I'm more along the lines of giving it a 4.5, and that's just because I felt like one of the characters, by the end, I was a little bit disappointed just because I didn't feel like there was a full character arc for this person. It felt very much like they stayed the same even after everything that they went through with the other main character. But I loved it all the same. If you are a reader out there and you love reading, this is a perfect book to read because you have 2 characters who also love reading. And typically I'm not a huge fan of those books, but this one, it wasn't cheesy the way that they portrayed it. It was just so heartfelt and so, I don't know how to describe it. It's whimsical, but also it's heart-wrenching at the same time, and I loved that. So I highly recommend this one. So good. Okay, the next book that I read, I think was my favorite, well, one of my favorite books that I read this past month, and it is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I had heard about this one before going into it, and I knew a lot of people had mixed feelings about Carrie Soto, the main character. But for me, I loved her. So Carrie Soto is Back, in case you don't know, is about a professional tennis player, Carrie Soto. And it starts off with her being a retired professional tennis player, and a new up-and-coming tennis player has just broken one of her records, her Grand Slam record. And so she decides to come out of retirement to then break her own record and win some more Grand Slams. It's all about her, her relationship with her father as her coach. There's also a love interest in here, and then also just her relationship with herself and with winning. And so going into this, people had told me that her character isn't very likable, and in fact sometimes you don't like her character at all, but I didn't get that at all. I loved Carrie the whole time. She was definitely a hard character, and she was definitely mean at times, but there was just something about her and the circumstances around her and how, especially in the media, people portrayed her, that I totally understood why she was the way that she was. Taylor Jenkins Reid, she can do so much with so few words, and so the emotions that she evoked from me while reading this, I cried again. First with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and then with this one, had me sobbing. This is what I wrote. I loved this book more than I thought I would. Carrie's relationship with her father and with winning were the best part. There's something so real and meaningful in how Carrie is written. She isn't a perfect character. She could be mean, but there is something so real about her that I loved her. I cried multiple times in this book, which means all these characters mean something to me. There's just a certain depth with this character that I just fell in love with. I related to, maybe in ways that I didn't want to relate to. If you are looking for a literary fiction book, this is the one to pick up. It is so dang good. Highly recommend this one. Carrie Soto is Back. The next book I'm going to talk about is one of the ebooks that I read. It's called For Now, Not Forever by C.W. Farnsworth. This is a new adult romance, enemies to lovers type. The premise of it is you have this guy who was the star quarterback of his school's team, and then this girl who was the head cheerleader of the rival team. And basically over the summer before they go into college, they meet up on neutral ground at this summer home, and they get to know each other and they fall in love and yada yada yada. I liked it. It was cute. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was sweet, but I wish that there was more depth with the characters. I wish that there would have been more plot. I will say the plot felt very realistic. It wasn't over dramatized. Yeah, I basically, I wish the ending had been stronger, and I wish that the relationship between the characters had been stronger. There's some side characters, you can tell that there's like spin-offs going on. But if you're looking for like a nice, light, airy read, like a good beach read, I would definitely recommend it, because that's what it is. So I was excited and interested in reading more by this author. So the next two books that I'm going to talk about are actually a part of a series, and they are the Bully series and A Flame by Penelope Douglas. I don't fully understand why no one in their time of really enjoying Penelope Douglas have not talked about these books. Without a doubt, her Bully series is my favorite that she's ever written. Like, I read Birthday Girl and like Pump 57 and her like Corrupt series, and those are good, but her Bully series just hits, and I think it's because they're the first ones that she wrote, and they're not like where the main character is like almost evil. So anyway, Bully is a friends to enemies to lovers romance. You have Jared and Tate. They're best friends when they're little, until one summer Jared goes to see his dad over the summer, and when he comes back, he hates Tate and basically bullies her all through high school until senior year. Tate decides that she wants to stand up for herself. Bully happens in their senior year. Jared is never so far a bully to where he is like evil. Like, he bullies her, but not to the point of like too far. You can definitely tell that this is like the first series that she's ever written, just because the writing style and the way in which she gets there is not as refined as she does it now, but it's still so good. Like, the first one still hits so good. I will say the reason why Jared hates Tate is really dumb. It's still a really good precursor for the next book that I read, A Flame, which is a continuation of Jared and Tate's story. It's now like 4 or 5 years later, and Jared and Tate had broken up during college because Jared followed Tate to college. He wasn't really doing anything, and so he was like, I need to break up with you and find myself before I can be like a true man to you. And of course she was angry by that, and so like I get both sides. So Flame starts off with them broken up and Jared coming back to Shelburne Falls because his mother is having a baby, and so he wants to be present for the baby. And so of course Jared and Tate run into each other, and oh my gosh, the angst in this book, oh, it's so good, especially because they're like both adults. And so sure, there's like some childish moments, but for the most part, like, they're more mature about their dislike of each other, and they're more mature about the angst in which they feel. It's so good. It hits so good. Let me read what I wrote. Okay. Their story is so good. Their romance is so solid and meaningful. The lack of deep side characters isn't that hard to get over because Jared and Tate are so great. The pacing is well done and the tension is heightened from the first. Bully is almost a novella compared to A Flame. The execution is there, and I'm just glad I found it. If you didn't like the intensity of her other series and the way that the guys would treat the girls before they got together in the other series, I do think that you would like this one. This series, so good. So good. Highly recommend it. I will keep rereading it. I love it. Love it. Let's go ahead and talk about this next book that I read, and it is called Fall Boys by Penelope Douglas. So this is a continuation of the Bully series. This is about their kids. And so Fall Boys is about one of the couple's sons and this other girl who lives on the wrong side of the tracks. It's another kind of enemies to lovers situation. And so I'm a little bit skeptical about this series just because I was worried what was going to happen actually ended up happening. So Penelope is trying to turn this series into a lot darker of a series. Not saying that like the dark stuff is bad. It just wasn't very well done in this one, and it just goes against the vibe of the series beforehand. So the characters themselves, I wasn't a huge fan of them. Their romance didn't make sense because the girl was literally so mean. Like so mean. Like she like beat up one of the guy's like female cousins. And I was just like, why do you like this girl? Like, I don't understand. The characters did grow on me. And so like by the end I was for them, but like overall plot, there just wasn't that much plot in the middle of it. It was heavy plot in the beginning and then heavy plot at the end, but not very much stuff going on in the middle. I will read the next one just because there's an anticipated couple in that one. So I hope that she does a really good job with it. I'm just a little bit disappointed because I love the Bully series so much. And so I hope that the next book is really good. Anyways, Fall Boys, 3 stars. This next book that I read is called Vox by Christina Doucher. This is one that I've had on my TBR list for a while now. The premise of this book is, so it's a literary fiction book. It's dystopian, in which we are in America and the government has decided that women can only speak 100 words a day. And so every woman and girl has a bracelet that they have to wear, and if they go over that 100 word limit, they get zapped. And for every word over, the zap gets increasingly worse until the point of could kill them. Also, women aren't allowed to have jobs anymore. They're no longer taught how to read or write. They're just taught numbers and accounting to keep a household. It's very reminiscent of like A Handmaid's Tale. You follow a family, and it's so you've got the husband, wife, and then you've got 2 boys and a girl. You're basically following the wife who had a doctorate and she studied linguistics. And so she feels very unfulfilled in her life as just a housewife. So again, very interesting premise. What I'll say about this book is I DNF'd it. There was a lot of telling instead of showing in this book. Also, the plot itself, there wasn't really anything there. It was literally just an angry female. And I am all about like feminist rage. Like, give me those books, I'll probably eat it up. But this one just it was almost to the point of being unrealistic. So this only happens within a year that these people now, like that women aren't allowed to talk and aren't allowed to work. And it just feels like all of this, it feels like it should have been set over like a 15 year period of time, because this mother goes to like hating her sons, like full on hating her sons. And to me, that's just not super realistic. I'll read what I wrote. I just couldn't get through this. It was too angry, not enough show, don't tell. It was all telling me how to feel. I understand what she was doing, but the overall plot lacked anything interesting. I read up until page 70 and then the very end, and it was still weird. It just ended with things going back to normal. The concept was interesting, but the execution was not there. Amen. I wanted more from this, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it. If you want an angry feminist novel, read A Handmaid's Tale. Unfortunately, Vox just wasn't a hit for me. So the next book I'm going to talk about is another book by C.W. Farnsworth, and it is called Famous Last Words. This is a hockey new adult romance. I really wanted to like this one. To me, the characters, their relationship didn't make sense to me. Like the way that they connected didn't make sense. It's a hockey romance where the guy is a hockey player, and the girl, she wants to be a marine biologist, and she is best friends with this other guy's stepbrother. Because she's best friends with the stepbrother, she's guilty by association to what the stepbrother and the family did to this other guy. So they hate each other. They eventually start hanging out. The guy trains her how to run a marathon, which didn't really come to fruition with anything by the end, because we don't even go to like have her run the marathon. Like it's never brought up again. A cute book overall, but not anything special. The characters were cute, but their connection felt weak. Why they didn't like each other made sense, but then them training together didn't. The marathon wasn't even mentioned again, so it just felt meaningless. Also, the way they would share their whole life story one moment and the next never speak again was annoying. They would share these really deep things with one another, but then all of a sudden they just wouldn't talk again. And so it was very like hot and cold, and to me it just didn't make sense. Their characters just felt very disjointed. I ended up giving it a 2 stars, which is too bad since I somewhat enjoyed the first C.W. Farnsworth book that I read. You know, you can't win them all. The next book I read is The Game of Love and Death by Martha Brockenborough. This one is I think it's YA literary fiction. The premise of this book is basically you have love and death personified, and throughout time, love and death have played this game where they each pick a player, set up the stakes for it, and if the 2 players fall in love at a certain time limit, then they both get to live, and they live happily ever after. But if they don't complete whatever challenge they're supposed to complete, then death gets to kill the player that she picked. It says Antony and Cleopatra, Helen of Troy and Paris, Romeo and Juliet, and now Henry and Flora. Got Henry and Flora. It's set in the 1930s in maybe New York City? In America. And you've got Henry, who is a orphaned white man who lives with a very wealthy, affluent family. He dreams of becoming a musician. And then you've got Flora, who is an African-American woman who is also an orphan. She owns her parents' club, but deep down, all she wants to be is the next Amelia Earhart. And so it's about their relationship and them being the 2 players of this game. The imagery is very interesting in this book. The way love and death are portrayed are very interesting in this book. But the bigger themes in this book are, again, it's just a bit disjointed, because they would go into these really intense ideas about race and poverty, but then they would back off of it and almost act like it's not a big deal and how it was being written. You know, like, if we're gonna go there, let's go there, which isn't what happened. It was like trying to keep it YA and lighthearted, but also touch on these really big things. And so to me, it just felt off. The book was both boring and wild, which is so true. It started sweet, but then got heavy, which wasn't bad, but the way things were portrayed, such as race, poverty, and love, was both a lot and then sloughed off like it was nothing. I appreciated the unique take on love and death. The imagery was lovely, and the message was as well. The execution just fell flat for me, which is, yeah, true. In the end, it just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, and that's okay. As far as like message goes, and if you want to give, you know, dip their toes into some deeper, harder subjects, I would recommend this book. I just think that that I'm not necessarily the audience. If you want to introduce these ideas to someone, I would say that this would be a really good way to do that. So, The Game of Love and Death. Whew. I had to get some water because my throat is killing me. I feel like I've been talking for forever. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is The Face Off by Callie Melly. So this is another sports romance, and it is between this girl who is a figure skater and a guy who is a hockey player. And the girl, she had dated a hockey player when she first got to school, and it ended badly, so she's got a thing against hockey players, but she ends up having a one-night stand with a hockey player, and then this hockey player dude is just obsessed with her and just wants to be with her, and that's how it goes. It's like an enemies to lovers, but really, I don't think he was ever her enemy. So it was one that I had seen on Instagram Reels. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It was not great. It was very cheesy. I'll just read what I wrote and we'll leave it at that. So I said, not a good book. There was zero character development. This is a book just for spies, no plot. It was either taking place at the skating rink or their bedrooms. No talk of family or class or majors or struggles or anything. They literally just think about each other. The spy scenes were so long and so corny. Like the first spy scene was like 3 chapters long, and I don't know why, because nothing even really happened. I mean, something happened, but like nothing really happened. It was short and a romance. That's all it really had going for it. Not good. I have really just been chasing that high of finding another book that's at least somewhat similar to Icebreakers. Nothing has come close. Okay, I've had to switch from my phone to my iPad and now to my laptop because I have zero space on anything, apparently, to film this whole video. So let's go ahead and keep going. So the next book that I read this month was His and Hers by Alice Feeney. This one is super popular. I mean, Alice Feeney is super popular. I ended up giving it 4 stars because holy cow, the twists and turns this took was insane. His and Hers is a story about there is this murder in this very small town, and you follow 2 perspectives. You follow his, which is the lead investigator of the murder, and then you follow hers, which is the lead journalist of the murder investigation story. And the way you find out about both of these people's past, you find out about this array of very creepy characters that live in the town. The entire time you were trying to figure out who did it, and it really can be anyone. It really could be anyone. I think the thing that I don't like about this book is it's written in a way. Alice Feeney, you can tell she writes it specifically so you keep guessing who it'll be. And it really wasn't until the end that you find out who it is, until the killer actually says that it was them. It's not until the end that you're really like, oh, so it's that person. Because that happened to me so many times. Like there would be a moment and I'd be like, oh, so like it's that person. But then the next moment, like, oh, I guess it's not. Oh, okay, so it's this person. But then no, again, until finally that last chapter, and then you find out who it actually is. So to me, some of it was just needlessly confusing. I will say the end person who did it, to me, their motive wasn't as strong as it could have been. Like, I get it. Like, it's a motive for sure, but I think it could have been maybe better. I don't know. It's a really good thriller. If you are looking for a thriller that just keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time, this is the one to read because it's written in such a way that you are constantly being surprised. There are trigger warnings in this too, so look those up. I loved reading it, but also it was exhausting to read. If you can go into it trying not to figure out who it is, because it's crafted in a way where you can't figure it out, then like you're golden. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. So His and Hers, Alice Feeney. I'm excited to read more of her books. So now the next book that I read has been one that I've had on my TBR list for a long time. I got this one forever ago, and it is See All the Stars by Kit Frick. It is a YA mystery. It's very reminiscent of like We Were Liars or One of Us is Lying. So you follow this group of high school friends and you follow them through their junior year and their senior year. You have your main character, Ellery, who is in this friend group, and in junior year, she's got, she's still very close with all of her friends. Also, she has a boyfriend, but then beginning of senior year, she's no longer friends with any of her friends. She doesn't have a boyfriend, and she is like uber depressed. When I started reading this, I thought maybe I wasn't gonna like it because I thought that people were just being super dramatic and that it wasn't as big of a deal as it actually turned out to be. It actually turned out to be a really big deal. And so for that, like I liked it. It got me. I really did not like. I hated one of the main characters in this book. But because of the twist, because of the pacing too, it felt like a very realistic pacing. And the mystery of it did. I mean, it really did turn out to be a big deal. People weren't being over dramatic about it. In that sense, it was really good. I do recommend, if you like YA mysteries that aren't, necessarily like murder mysteries, I would recommend for that. Like, it got me. Like, it was good. I probably won't ever read it again, but it was decent. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. And it was docked mainly because I hated one of the characters. So Clark has shown up and has completely made it so the lighting on this is crazy. We're just gonna keep changing the where this is being filmed at. Okay, the next book I'm gonna talk about is another ebook that I read, and it is called Wreck and Ruin by Emma Slate. This is a motorcycle romance, and it is one that I have basically forgotten about. It is not that good. I'm just going to read what I wrote. This was way too insta-lovey for me. I hate it when a book lasts over only 1 week, especially when they have just met to when they fall in love and are head over heels. The hero, Colt, was very sweet and seemed ready for a forever relationship. I liked the dynamic between the two main characters. Overall, I didn't like the book, though. I ended up giving it 2 stars. Probably won't read any of the other books. Just didn't hit for me, and that's okay. The Reaper by Rue Nix. Rue Nix wrote Gothicana. This one is like a dark romance mafia book series. And The Reaper is the second one in the series. The first one is called The Predator, and basically it starts off with this girl who is the daughter of this mafia family, and she's uber smart, and she doesn't really want to be a part of the mafia anymore, and she codes, and she ends up coding something that can break into any system, and she ends up misplacing those codes. The enforcer of another mafia family then kidnaps her / hires her to find these codes and basically dismantle them. And so it's like enemies to lovers type situation. I really enjoyed the first one and their relationship just because it felt fun and new and different than I feel is typically portrayed in a mafia romance. But the second one, I don't know what happened to our really badass female character, but she just wasn't it in the second one. The author just didn't put a lot of thought into the plot in the second one. They were mainly putting energy into the relationship. Also, there's like all of these twists at the end that just felt very unearned. And also the plot of the first one ended up not being a big deal. Like, it ended up just like being completely taken care of. No one cared, especially since the first one, at least that plot was good. I ended up giving it 3 stars, but really I think it just deserves 2. The very last book that I am going to talk about, which is probably my favorite book of this month, and it is The Atlas 6 by Olivier Blake. You know, I knew that this was a very popular book, and I knew that people loved it. And so like I went into it knowing like, oh, I'll probably enjoy it. I didn't realize how much I was really going to enjoy it. For anybody who doesn't know, at this point, I don't know how you wouldn't know. The Atlas 6 is a dark academia book, and it's basically about these powerful magicians. Each of them have different kinds of power, and they are chosen by the society for a fellowship. A 2-year-long fellowship, however, within that first year, only 5 can actually be chosen out of the 6. And along the way, you figure out how only 5 are chosen, and also what all they're studying, or this huge library they have access to that nobody else has access to. I mean, you've got this team and you're trying to figure out the society and their motivations, also Atlas, his motivations, also just each of the characters and their motivations. Like if the Umbrella Academy and Vicious by V.E. Schwab had a baby, it would be this book. The writing is extremely dense. I'm not smart enough to know the things about the different theories that they have in this book. But regardless, the characters are so fascinating. They're so flawed. It's wild the different personalities that you have. And so seeing them all try and figure out how to make it through this year and the reasons why they're there and the motivations that they have, it's just so interesting. I am chomping at the bit to get the second book. There's just these different little plot points that make these people who aren't really human human. I don't know exactly how else to describe it other than you got to read it. If you are interested in fantasy, magical realism, science fiction, you know, anything like that, pick this one up. Pick this one up if you haven't. Also talk to me about it because I have so many theories. So that's the end. My throat, my voice is just a mess right now. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope that you pick up some of these books. Let me know if you do, or if you thought the same thing as me for any of these books, or if you thought completely differently than me on some of these books. Let me know. Subscribe if you want to subscribe, like if you want to like, comment if you want to comment, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Okay, bye.